Everyone to the meeting. This is a meeting taking place in the chamber, council chamber here in Shepton, and we have members of the planning committee, officers, public speakers, and members of the public physically present in the chamber. We also have members of the public watching the meeting on Teams. Cameras within the council chamber allow us to film the meeting for viewers on Teams and also to record the meeting. Therefore, any members of the public present should be aware that they may be recorded, and even if they're not participating in the meeting. If this causes you any concern, then please let us know now. Members who have brought their own device with them should ensure their cameras are switched off, and very importantly, the device, microphone and speakers are to be muted during the duration of the meeting, otherwise this causes feedback on the council sound system. Public speakers contributing to the meeting virtually should switch off their cameras off and put their microphones on mute until they're invited to speak by the chair. It's not permitted for any members of the public viewing by Teams or within the council chamber to contribute to the meeting at any time. Should any member of the planning committee wish to speak, raise your hand and catch my attention, or the vice chair, Tony, or the legal advisor or lead officers. When members in the chamber speak, remember to switch your desk microphone on so that all in attendance and the viewing members of the public can hear you. Please do not use the chat function within the Teams for anything. All contributions must be made verbally. Please can all mobile phones be set to silence? Great, thank you very much indeed. Right, we'll move on to apologies for absence. And Helen, do we have any?
Yes, thank you, Chair. We have some apologies today. I'll just bring up my list. So we've had apologies from councillors Adam Boyden, Philip Ham and Helen Kay, and we have substitutes of Councillor Steve Ashton and Councillor Alistair Hendry for Adam and Philip Ham. No substitute today for Helen Kay.
Okay, thank you for that. Right, we have the agenda in front of us, so I'm going to actually alter it slightly because we have a question from the public which I think relates to the minutes of the previous minutes. Just to remind people, because we had 2 meetings in December, we have 2 sets of minutes to approve. But first of all, I'm going to go to public question time, and the question from, I'm looking for
Mr. Kevin Bird.
Pembroke. My apologies. On a separate piece of paper. Right. Does Mr. Bird wish to announce what he wants to say?
Thank you, Chair, members, and thank you to the Chair for taking this item in advance of you discussing the minutes from the 2nd of December committee. I speak today to ask that the minutes from the 2nd of December Planning Committee record a key statement made by case officer to members. The omission is in paragraph 24 of the draft minutes for item agenda 7, land at Great Duns Close, Beckington. During the case officer's presentation to members, she referred to a recent appeal decision for land at Tower Hill Farm, Bath Road, Beckington, informing members that the appeal was dismissed on design grounds. And this can be heard at 2 hours, 12 minutes and 14 seconds in the YouTube recording. As the inspector accepted that Beckington is a sustainable location for development and had no in principle objection to the Tower Hill Farm application, the case officer recommended approval to members of the Great Duns Close application. The 2nd of December minutes should record this verbal statement to members as it was critical in the case officer's recommendation to approve and members subsequently voting also to approve. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Bird. I have in front of me a response from the council. Whilst a request has been made to amend the recorded minutes to reflect the decision-making process taken by members in relationship to agenda item 7, 2025/0276/OUT. In particular, in relation to comments made by the presenting officer. I'm satisfied that the minutes as presented reflect the presentation by the officer, the comments made by the members, and the justification for taking the decision to approve application 2025/0276/OUT, which is the subject matter of this section of the minutes. So that's the position we are in. Now, my understanding, this is the only public question we have here. So we can revert back now to the agenda we have in front of us. And we have two sets of minutes. The first one is for the 2nd of December. And that refers to, I believe, the comments you've just received from the case officer and Mr. Bird. So any comments on the minutes of the 2nd of December? Councillor Sully.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to put my head above the parapet here, because sometimes when you say something, you may have others thinking the same. I'm a little bit confused by that, the public question and the response to it. Is it that inaccurate information was provided to us, but the responses that didn't affect the decision? Have I got that wrong? Does anyone else understand it?
My understanding is that the minutes are being challenged as to whether, by a member of the public, as to whether they reflect the members' comments. The members' comments and also the discussion, I think, as well. And as such, it's been considered by the officers, and you've had the formal response to say that it wasn't material to the impact on the decision, and they feel the minutes accurately reflect the presentation by the officer. Would you like to hear from Simon Trafford?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Sully, yeah, the Chair's reflected the position. What we've got here is, obviously, you were issued with the minutes of the meeting, and it's important to recognise that the minutes of the meeting don't record verbatim exactly what is said by the presenting officer, exactly what is said by yourselves when you're having your discussions. It's a record of the decision that you've taken. And obviously, in addition to the minute, there's the officer report, which also sits there as a matter of fact. What effectively the public speaker has asked is for a specific comment reference, which is set out in the case officer's report, to be formally recorded within the minutes of the meeting. It doesn't need to be formally recorded for a number of reasons. Firstly, because it's set out in the report, and so that's not checked, that's not challenged. And in arriving at your decision, you didn't specifically, as a group, highlight that as a reason why you were going to recommend planning approval for that application that was the subject of the presentation and is the subject matter of the minutes. I hope that's helped.
Okay, right. Shall we go through the minutes and time-honoured way? Councillor Hart?
Is there just a reason why we aren't able to correct them? Wouldn't it just be easier to accept that there's been a statement made saying that there's a slight inaccuracy, and that we could, not inaccuracy, however you want to describe it. Is there a reason why we can't just alter them slightly to reflect what this gentleman has said?
I mean, again, I think as a council, as a committee, we've got to be very careful, because ultimately we as a council are in charge and responsible for recording the minutes of our meetings. And as I've said, the purpose of the minute is is to set out as a package, as within the package of information, why you why you as councillors took your decision on the officer recommendation. Firstly, do we want to be told by members of the public what we put in our minutes? Because as we've said before, the minutes don't record everything verbatim that's discussed in this room when you're considering the agenda items. And secondly, again, if a committee you feel strongly that the reference to the other application, which is what the reference is about, was so material for the reason why you were prepared to agree with the officer recommendation to approve the application that you were discussing, then you can record it. But from memory of the discussion and having reviewed the recording, I don't think that the reference was so material that was the only reason that justified your agreement to the officer recommendation.
Thank you for that. I do recognise. You want to come back, Councillor Hart, or is this a new?
Yeah, I mean, maybe we could just all take a minute to read the email that Helen sent this morning and make sure that everyone's completely happy, because Claire's already said that she is kind of slightly unsure of what this is all about, and I'm trying to read it while you're talking, even though I read it this morning before I came. So I just think it wouldn't do us any harm to spend 2 minutes reading it and make sure no one has any further questions. So it seems, if it's enough to be brought before us at the beginning of this meeting, that's the reason.
Can I say that members of the public are welcome to bring anything forward in public speaking time, and that is why we're having it here. That's why I altered the agenda to accommodate this. I do recognise that we have very, very clear minutes. I'm very aware of the conversation we had at the meeting and the fact that this wasn't a material consideration for the discussion, and I don't see any reason why, given that it is acknowledged in the officer's report, that isn't sufficient. Otherwise, we'll end up with minutes which are far too long, far too unhelpful, and also we will spend an awful lot of time at the front end of every meeting having minutes amended and changed accordingly. All members here have the minutes circulated in advance with papers for some considerable time ahead of the meeting, and therefore we can now go through the minutes page by page. And can I continue to do that, please? Right. This is the first of the two sets of minutes. This is 2nd of December. And we have got pages 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, 7 and 8, and 9 and 10. Any comments? I see no hands raised. Would I therefore have a recommendation for approval, please? And Councillor Denton for approval, Councillor Robbins for seconding. Could I have a show of hands, please? No. 10 for, any against? Approve the minutes. Any abstentions? So we have 1 abstention. Thank you. Right, we then move on to the minutes of the 10th of December. And again, as we've done in the past, pages 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, 7 and 8. Any comments on these minutes? Okay. Could I have A proposer and a seconder, please. Proposed, councillor Robbins, seconder. Councillor Clark. Thank you very much indeed. Right. Oh, my apologies. Could I have, we have a proposer and a seconder in front of us. Could I have a show of hands to support? Thank you. Any against? Any abstentions? One abstention. Okay, so 2 abstentions. Thank you, councillor Hendry. We will then move on to declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest other than the city, town and parish twin hatters here in the room? No, thank you very much indeed. We'll then move on to the first of the planning applications in front of us, item 5. And this is the Mid Somerset Showground, Shepton Mallet, and we're being asked to for those online. I've just had my microphone swapped. Thank you very much indeed. Right, we have a planning application in front of us. Just to remind everybody that this is one we have seen and has been approved. I'm now considering more details on it. And I will hand over to the officer on this one. And I believe it's going to be Trudy.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so as you've just heard, this application is returning to committee for an update following members' resolution to approve the development in September 2025. So the application is in outline with all matters reserved, save for access, and it's for a mixed-use neighbourhood looking to include up to 620 dwellings, a care home, primary school, nursery, a local centre, open space and on-site infrastructure. So it's at the former Mid Somerset Showground site in Cannersgrove Road in Shepton Mallet. So this slide just shows an aerial view of the site and the extent of the red line. I won't show all the plans just because of the nature of the changes to the proposal, but they are available if anything's needed. So members will recall they originally resolved to approve this application on the 1st of September last year. In accordance with the officer recommendation, and this was subject to tweaks to the plan's condition to remove reference to the building heights plan and also the addition of an extra informative. At the time of the resolution, we required a reservation notice for phosphate mitigation. At the time we required a reservation notice for phosphate mitigation up front prior to the decision notice being issued. Which is why it's specifically mentioned in the committee's resolution, which is copied on the slide here. So this was to ensure that the number of credits required was available and to give us assurance that there was a reasonable prospect of the mitigation being secured. Thank you. So since then, credits have become more readily available and the reservation certificate is no longer required up front. So instead, amended wording of the conditions is proposed to ensure that an updated nutrient neutrality and mitigation statement and also an updated shadow habitat regulations assessment is submitted. And that would be prior to the commencement of each phase of the development, along with the allocation certificate. So just to note, this need to return to committee is as a result of a change to our internal processes, rather than the recent Supreme Court decision that you heard about in the last committee with the Sub Road Butley case. So it's the same amount of mitigation still required. It's just that the reservation certificate isn't required up front and that we're making changes to the conditions. So this was the original phosphate credits condition as approved by members in September. So it required the allocation certificate to be issued prior to the commencement of each phase. And then these are the proposed replacement conditions. So the first one requires an updated nutrient neutrality assessment and SHRA, the habitat regulations assessment. And the second one requires the allocation certificate as we previously conditioned. So the updated officer recommendation is as shown here. So it's to delegate to the head of planning to approve the application, subject to the prior signing of the Section 106 agreement to be agreed in accordance with the scheme of delegation, subject to the planning conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Just so that everyone's clear, what we're looking at is a change in a condition, and this is being predicated on the changes to the availability of nutrient credits as much as anything else, is my understanding of it. We have two other speakers, and then we'll move on to further questions. We have Robin Horton, if he's with us, from Shepton Neighbourhood Planning Group.
Sorry, Chair. No, actually just speaking as a member of the public, as I outlined in my email to the committee. So yeah, thank you, Chair. Okay, we're having fun. We all spent Christmas reading the consultation on the NPPF, and we're all, familiar with the 280 changes that are coming forward. In terms of this very minor amendment to this application, I think, and this was raised when the application first came before you, I believe by Jane Nicklin, the chair of Shepton Town Council Planning Committee, was that some of the residents near the development had made representations to the Town Council about wildlife and flora and fauna on the site that wasn't accurately reflected by the applicants in their reports. And I think my concern, just as a member of the public, is that now we're delegating to the applicant to come forward with nutrient reports and other reports. Who is actually going to be checking that those accurately reflect what is on the ground? Is that a function of the council? Is that a function of the enforcement officers? Because, as I say, we've certainly had representations of the public that hasn't been the case up until now. Thank you.
Thank you. I will hold that question, and the officer will respond to both at the end, if appropriate. Right, we have a second speaker is this Richard Thomas? And just to put on record, we've had interesting conversation. Officially, there is a notice period before speaking, and while I will always try to be as accommodating as possible, we do need to encourage members of the public to adhere to the notification, which is well signposted on the website. However, in the spirit of New Year, welcome, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Very much appreciate that. Could I draw members' attention, please, to the comments from Shepton Mallet Town Council, page 77 of your big bundle. In particular, the statement that there's a need for a community centre to be included in this build, possibly integrated into the designated area for the commercial centre. The Town Council have said this is particularly critical given the extreme lack of publicly accessible places for groups to meet in Shepton, and an extra 620 homes will put unrealistic pressure on existing facilities. The requirement for a community space is highlighted in the neighbourhood plan. I had the privilege of chairing the neighbourhood plan steering group, both through examination and through referendum. And the need for a community space on this development is well marked, was clearly examined and supported, and a lot of public money has been spent on developing and looking at that need, and yet it's still not fully appearing in the scheme. Can I please ask councillors not to let this go ahead without much more consideration for the community facility needs? If I can just point you to the neighbourhood plan policy on this, policy 2A, a community building with meeting rooms, social and health facilities. This may be provided as part of or adjoining the local centre and should be designed to benefit from potential links and dual use with adjoining community facilities and open space provision. We really should not continue to build large developments without providing space for community meetings, for things like children's parties, for old age people to come and meet together, for all the things that a community does and makes the life of the community. This really is important, and I just want to emphasise and ask you, councillors, not to let this go ahead without a lot more detailed consideration for the community building. It's in the neighbourhood plan. It went through referendum and passed. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. I will, before we go to members' questions, to ask, does the planning officer want to make any comment on either of those two questions as much as speakers from the public?
Yes, please. Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so the question about who would enforce the and sort of check the phosphate information that would be submitted as part of these tweaks to the conditions here. So that would be part of a discharge condition application that would come in, and it would be Somerset Ecology Services, who are our ecologists, and sort of in combined with the case officer would be reviewing that as part of that application. So that's how we'd review that information. In terms of the community centre and policy 2A of the neighbourhood plan, the neighbourhood plan had just been made prior to the previous committee in September. And so that issue was discussed at that previous committee, and it's not an issue that I'd recommend revisiting at this stage. We're just looking at the changes that have been made that were covered on the slides here today.
Thank you. Is that clear to people? And if we want any advice on this, and I'm sure a legal individual Leslie will share with us. My understanding, what we're looking at is a change to the conditions. This is not about looking at additional factors or revisiting discussions which have already been occurred. Am I correct?
Chair, that's absolutely correct. The matter before you today and your colleagues relates to the changes in conditions and the requirement for no certificate.
Thank you. Yeah, I think they've all caught colds. Anyway, more to the point. Do members have any questions of the officers before we consider the amendment to the conditions? Councillor Lovell.
Yeah, I'll try and make the question rather without anything else. I'm coming back on the issue of the community centre. I accept the point about not revisiting something, but also I think I have to flag up the field of the matter is in the air. I think this group could reasonably have a reasonable explanation as to why this has not been considered as part of the things ongoing in terms of the list of NS 106 requirements. You know, the minutes are there. I can read them. It's there in the neighbourhood plan. So I think before we ought to put the matter to bed properly and have a clear explanation of why this has been dropped from the considerations of this application. Thank you.
I'm not aware we have anyone from the developer here. And as far as I can see, in terms of the planning officer, do you want to add anything to your previous statement?
So we did discuss this last time, and I think the reason was that there wasn't sufficient justification for a community building. So the neighbourhood plan policy did have some sort of flexibility in terms of community facilities being delivered where sort of appropriate and necessary for that development. And but there are other community elements, the sort of public open space, the community orchard, and it was felt and sort of recommended in my officer report at the time that was sufficient to meet that local plan, that neighbourhood plan policy.
Councillor
Question
Lovell,
answered.
do you want to come back?
No, question answered.
And I would like to go to a motion. Go on, Councillor Sully.
Can I just check, because this is a significant planning application for the town and the surrounds. And it's to do with a condition, and I note the chair said this is not about past conversations, but there are future conversation. Are we going to be removing the opportunity for public engagement and scrutiny and transparency? So it's kind of a why, why are we doing this? That's my concern, because that looks quite broad, that bullet point. That doesn't look like it's specific to phosphates. It looks like it could be more. Could this scope creep? I just want to make and I can't not make a comment about the community centre. It's different, a space where people can come together to inspire, create, deliver. The effects on well-being is different to a outside space where there's a area where people can move. That it's a focus, it's a catalyst. It's very, very different. I would, if I was a member of the public, I would find that response a bit dismissive of the importance of a community centre. It's going to come up time and time again, and I note that Chair says this is not the time to talk about it, but I do, as it's been mentioned by a colleague and a member of the public. When will we have the opportunity to talk about that, or are you saying it is dismissed? Two questions. The why are we delegating? Will it be more broad than that, than the phosphates and community centre question?
Understanding, and I will let the officer respond formally, but my understanding, this came to committee. We had a lengthy discussion at the time. I'm not sure how many of you were present, but it's not very long ago. And there was a delegation at the end of it to the head of planning to, as is always the case on some of these larger developments, for them to move it forward. And this is being extended specifically around the nutrient situation. And that is my understanding. I totally understand the arguments around the 15-minute concept of being able to go to a 15-minute community. And so that's, I think, is what you're trying to articulate. And I think large arguments have a lot of facilities, but we've got a very specific role here, which is nothing to do with additional conditions. Maybe what you're suggesting, we look at how we handle some of the Thank you. And that is probably, quite important, the parish council, or the town council, if I remember, supported the planning application we saw in front of us. We had considerable amount of briefing on it, and we also recognised that there were things on the planning application which weren't necessarily totally supported by everybody at the time. And I will put my hand up. I didn't support not this, that, but something else. But we looked at it in the round after considerable amount of officer work. And we're not in the position now to go back and re-look at this particular issue. And that's a legal position, which I think our legal advisor confirmed. But we could have a discussion outside the meeting about how we handle some of these complex and strategic planning applications forward.
Chair, I don't want my question diluted, because that is a really good response you've given me, and it does reassure me about the question about the community centre. But are we removing the opportunity for public engagement, transparency and scrutiny? Is this going to creep to wider? Is it just specifically phosphates? That's my question.
Could one of the planning officers respond, please?
Yeah, I'll just add to what Truda's already said. try and help explain to Councillor Sully. So again, as you've heard, it is just about controlling the way in which the phosphate mitigation is to be provided. It will still be provided. It's just that there is no longer a requirement for the applicant to demonstrate to us that there is sufficient credits available to deliver the mitigation, because we know there is sufficient credits. So that's the scope of the tweak. In terms of this matter being subject to public examination scrutiny, this is just the outline stage. So we've got the reserved matters to come through the process, which will be subject to the normal public consultation, opportunity and reporting. So again, you can be satisfied that's not going to happen.
Right, Councillor Hart and then Councillor Reid.
Thank you. I think it's really helpful, the suggestion that the chair made about a discussion around this, but maybe not right now if that's not felt appropriate, because it is important. And I just feel generally that when we're asked to give planning to these.
Someone online.
Could I ask somebody online to mute your microphone, please? Thank you.
When we're asked to give outline planning, which I feel we increasingly are, with all matters to be reserved and looked at a later date, it never sits well with me. I always think, why can't I just have the detail now? Because it always feels like it's just a way of manoeuvring, maybe not the ideal outcome. Maybe I'm just cynical, because, ultimately this is this is the size, if we look at local villages to us, this is like 2 villages together. It's big. And I think to not have anything there as a kind of community centre, even more important in today's world where most people are working from home, there needs to be a place for actual human interaction. And so I do think it's really important. I just felt that I needed to make that statement.
Thank you. Councillor Reid, and then we will go to a vote.
Thank you. Just a quickie. I mean, Councillor Sully was quite right. It's quite a broad paragraph we've got up there. So can you just confirm that the 106 is just for, as you say, for the phosphates, and it won't affect any of the other 106 agreements at all?
Yeah, that's correct. This resolution that you make today, it won't actually change the Section 106 agreement that was the heads of terms for the Section 106 agreement that was agreed last time. It's just to tweak those conditions and to remove the requirement from the resolution for the reservation certificate to be submitted up front. So that's the only changes.
Thank you. Can I just ask a really quick question around this change, which is obviously not going to just affect this particular application, it will affect all applications moving forward, I presume. How then, if the certificate is not required up front, which kind of helps because it's like, oh, we can see everything is being done in the way that we need it to be, so great, go ahead. If we're allowing it to be almost retrospectively, who is going to be responsible for making sure it happens? Who is it going to fall to? Is it going to fall to enforcement, or how is it going to be managed? It would just be interesting to know that, please.
It's so the reservation notice or certificate is called, it has been called both in different reports. So that's effectively is sort of a deposit in terms of the phosphate credits that they're buying. So it's, putting a deposit down for a small amount and then submitting that reservation notice to us before a decision is issued. But because credits are so readily available, that's no longer necessary. So it is fine for them to just submit the allocation certificate when they get the full amount. Yeah, but was there a second question?
Yeah, I mean, I think so following from the answer Trudy's just given you're concerned about how it would be enforced. I think it's worthwhile just remembering that this development allows for the delivery of 620 plus houses, I think. And with the larger applications of the scale of this magnitude, what will happen is that a developer will be identified who will then build out the scheme in part or in full. And as we've said, we've got the reserve matter stages, and they will be, in order for them to sell the houses, they need to make sure that they've gone through correct process and correct procedure. I would imagine you're sort of thinking that the enforcement team's under pressure and therefore it's unlikely to be able to jump in and solve a problem. I would be very surprised if we got to that case with this particular type of development. But if we did need to, we would use the enforcement powers that the council has to make sure that all the conditions are complied with.
The case that they can't sell them before they show that they've complied with all the requirements.
And Councillor Hart, if you want the specifics about a internal policy, then I'm sure one of the planning staff will give you the assurance you're seeking. Thank you. I'm anxious to go to a motion on this, but I noticed that Councillor Clark, did you want to ask a specific question?
No, just make a comment, Chair. Thank you. I've always voted against this application, and I've always been against it, even from the original consultation, which was probably 7 or 8 years ago, and I shall continue to do so. This is classic mission creep. This started off as 500 dwellings. We're now up to 620, and I do hope it was a slip of the tongue on Simon Trafford's part when he said we're looking at 620 plus dwellings. I hope that wasn't correct, but maybe there's more to this than I know. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Trafford.
Just apologies, Councillor Clark. It is the Planning Permission that the council have already issued allows for up to 620 units, and if the council accept this modification to their decision, it will still be up to 620.
Thank you for that. Can I just correct one thing, if I may, or just add to the comment Councillor Hart made? A planning application of this size normally has, not at outline stage, a number of attached policies, which make it neither one thing nor another. They rarely go a straight outline. And if you remember, I asked for an amendment to one of the policies regarding the location of the height of the tallest buildings on the site. And I think there is a real question about the number and the significance on our planning application of the attached policies. And maybe that is something I'm going to suggest we actually have some training on, because it's no longer outline or reserve matter. It's now in between stage, which seems to be creeping forward. And I think that has great benefits as well as some significant downsides. And we need to, as a planning committee, appreciate that. And I will leave that with the officers to consider how we take that forward. Right, can I have a proposal for this one? Thank you, Councillor Robbins. This is the recommendation in front of us. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Reid. And the recommendation is quite clear and specific. Do I need to read it out? I think you all have had a chance to read it. If anybody is hesitating, 176, I believe, is the page where it's read out. Written out. And this is the delegation to the head of planning to approve the application subject to prior signing of a Section 106 agreement in respect of the scheme, according to the scheme of delegation, and removing the need for a pre-application, I've forgotten the correct word, statement around, it's a removal, sorry, I haven't got the name in front of us.
Chair,
It's 176 pages.
Chair, is it possible to have the word phosphates in that? Because again, it sounds like everything. It sounds like lots of things could be scooped up in this. So can it say to do with delegating?
Does anyone else have any comments or suggestions on that? Does this cause any problems to the officers?
I'm just looking at the report, Chair members, and it is quite clear what the recommendation is asking you to consider. So effectively, on page 2, there are the changes to the conditions that would ensure the management of the phosphate mitigation. So condition 44 of the previous resolution would be deleted and it would be replaced by condition 44 and 45. So again, that provides the control mechanism to ensure that the phosphate mitigation is still secured. And that is the scope of what the report is asking you to consider. If you go further down the report at 6.1, you've got the updated recommendation, and then in the table below 6.1, you've got the full heads of terms that are being set out again to reflect what was set out last time and what you've agreed that the Planning Commission should be granted subject to. So effectively, the report itself is quite clear that all you're being asked to do is to basically change the condition arrangement that was previously presented and approved by you as a committee, and that's delete condition 44 as drafted, impose an update condition 44, and impose a new condition 45.
Thank you. I think this is a case where we need to always consider the officer's report alongside the recommendation, and their two are well embedded. For those who have got an information pack in front of you, you can look at it on page 30. I know it's 2 of the actual specific report. So with that assurance, are people still happy to go forward with this recommendation on which is to delegate the head of planning to approve the application subject to the prior signing of a Section 106 agreement to be agreed in accordance with the schema delegation and subject to planning conditions? Are people content with that? Could I have a proposer? Thank you. And I have a seconder. Thank you. Can we go to a show of hands then, please? Ten. And those against? 1. And any abstentions? 1. Okay, it's now been carried. Thank you very much indeed, everyone. Right, shall we now move on to item 6, and this is planning application for 2020-1874, and it's a full one. It's to consider a change of use of land to 3 traveller pitches and retention of landscaping business offices. It is retrospective. Right.
Excuse me, Chair.
Do we have a speaker?
Chair, can I ask a question? Can I ask a question about procedure? Because I have been contacted by a member of the public who is a neighbour of the application, who has said he has had no notification of this. He wasn't able, therefore, to ask to speak at today's meeting. I wonder, could we ask the planning officer, please, to confirm whether these were sent out and whether that would affect today's meeting at all?
Thank you. Would the planning officer care to respond? Are you going to respond, Troy, or?
So just to confirm, the record in relation particularly to the officer's report indicates that consultation letters were sent out in January of last year, and that there were several responses received. I think it was 6 letters of objection, 1 letter of support in relation to it. The obligation for the authority under the legislation is that we send the consultation letters out. There is no obligation on us to ensure that everyone who is sent one receives it or acknowledges it. So we have discharged that legal responsibility.
Okay. Thank you. And I've had no requests for any late speakers either. Shall we now move on to the presentation from the Officer Colson Langford?
Thank you, Chairman. So as you quite rightly said, it's an application as part retrospective for a change of use of land to 3 number traveller pitches and the retention of a previous business on the site with regard to landscaping office. The application was originally submitted in around 2020, and for complications surrounding phosphates, etc., the application was delayed somewhat. Over that period of time as well, there's been sort of changes to the scheme, and there is also, you'll see, an extended permission on the site for a holiday type use, which was partially implemented, so therefore remains extant. So in terms of the location, it's in Wood Lane, and it's just outside the development limits of Butley. Butley being a primary village in our local plan, which has a good number of services and facilities, etc., including public transport. So it's not a bad location for the said use, but it's still outside development limits. Just look at the site here. I've said existing and approved sites. So if you look at the site on the right, this was the sort of submission back in 2020 with regard to the change to 3 traveller pitches, and this was the existing site layout. But some of the site on the left, you'll see site layout on the left is what was approved, and over this period of time, some of what was on the left with regard to the holiday chalets, etc., was implemented. So that, like I explained, that site remains extant. So that was for 6 chalets to be erected on the site and operated as holiday lets, etc. Now this site layout is what is proposed, and essentially is what's on site at the moment, and referred as 3 static caravans on the site to be occupied as gypsy traveller pitches. The 2 on the left-hand side there were part of the original permission granted for the holiday, but those weren't to be used as holiday accommodation. They were going to be used as office, ancillary office, etc., but now are being used as a gypsy traveller, and 1 new caravan situated in the top right there. So the parking, etc., was all laid out in accordance with what was originally approved, and remains like that. What's also proposed is to screen the site further, as was a condition on the original consent, to put screening down the right-hand side of the site there, so it is well screened from the surrounding area and has less of an impact. Okay. So this is some photographs of what's on the site at the moment and the access arrangement. Top left there, the office building below there, landscape officer, and some pictures of the caravans. This gives you a site layout, and you can see how it's site layout, and it's pretty up to date. I think this is a couple of years old now, this aerial photograph. And you'll see to the north there is a site previously granted permission by the council for 2 travelling pitches above, serving 1 family. So this is a recommendation, but if I just explain how we've reached that decision with regard to one of the most important elements, similar to your previous applications with regards to getting around the phosphate issue. Now, essentially, they had, with having a stamp permission for 6 units on the site, without the need to demonstrate phosphate neutrality, they could implement that all 6 units. What we've concluded is that that is a fallback position for the applicant if they so wish. So coming forward with 3 pitches rather than the 6 would be a significant reduction in fallout, phosphate fallout from the site. So, but we still have the problem that they also have permission for the other units which they could implement. So the applicant has come forward and suggested that he will enter into a unilateral undertaking to ensure that that original permission, well, part of that original permission for the 6 holiday lets is rescinded. So the success of this application rests with making sure that if we do approve, that permission is only granted subject to receiving that unilateral undertaking that original 6 pitch traveller holiday let site is rescinded. And obviously we would like to see that if approved today, we'd like to see a sort of time limit put on that to make sure that that is the case. Okay, so essentially, as you'll see from the recommendation, the proposal accords with our policy DP15 for traveller pitches. You'll appreciate, as I've repeated several times at this committee, that we have a significant shortfall of probably over 90 pitches in the wider district. So this would add significantly, well, not significantly, but would add to reducing that shortfall. And in all other respects, in terms of siting, design, appearance, landscape, there are conditions which we've put on. So we don't feel that in this case, we feel in this case that a recommendation proof is acceptable, subject to the imposition of those conditions and making sure that the unilateral agreement is brought forward in a timely fashion. That concludes. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. We have 2 public speakers on this application. The first one is Mark White, who's with us today. You have 3 minutes from when you start.
Sorry, thank you. Just to point out to start with, the photographs that were just shown there, they're about 5 years old. They're out of date. They're misleading. That's not what's on the site at the moment. There are 3 static caravans on that site, which are lived in by Mr. Roberts, the applicant, and his family. I'm Mark White. I own a piece of land adjacent to this site in question. I've had this land for 30 years, and I've witnessed the various uses of this site, along with its failed planning applications and many breaches of planning regulations by its now deceased owner, Robert Hallett. Mr. Langford, the case officer for Mr. Roberts' application, has produced a report which is, in my opinion, biased in favour of Mr. Roberts and totally lacks the impartiality I would expect from a local authority officer. It largely ignores the objections raised in the original application, such as antisocial behaviour, the state and condition of the site, and the frequent breaking of planning legislation. The reason for this lack of impartiality is quite simple. Somerset Council are desperate to be seen to be providing pitches for travellers in our area. This report and its recommendations are largely based on 2 things. The application could be much worse. Instead of the 3 proposed caravans, it could be 6 caravans used for holiday lets. The other is Mr. Roberts' links to the travelling community. The 6 holiday lets are a red herring. The unexplained issue with this proposal is where would Mr. Roberts and his family live? They currently live in 3 of the caravans, which, if they were holiday lets, would mean they couldn't live in any of them. This is a farce and should be ignored. Regarding Mr. Roberts' traveller status, In the report, Mr. Langford states in paragraph 8.4, the applicant has provided sufficient evidence to show they meet the criteria for a traveller family, and the council has no evidence to the contrary. The applicant comes from nomadic family backgrounds and continues to live this lifestyle with their main employment taking them around the country and even abroad, providing facilities and food stores at festivals. I cast doubt on how true this is. From what I have witnessed, Mr. Roberts is always at the site, even during the summer months at the height of the festival season. He's always there. The only evidence of work I have witnessed is Mr. Roberts waiting for a lift in the morning, holding a chainsaw. So what evidence has Mr. Roberts provided? Due to the significance of this status, I believe proof should be put in the public domain. We can all claim to be descendants of nomads. The other point in Mr. Langford's report I wish to raise is that of sewerage and phosphates. In paragraph 8.13, he states a 12,000 litre package treatment plant has been installed, discharging via land drains to a drainage field, a plan for which was provided by the applicant's agent, which details what this should look like. David Charland, a Butley Parish councillor.
Can you wind up now, please?
Sorry.
Can you wind up? You've had your 3 minutes.
Sorry. David Charland, the Butley Parish councillor, runs a business installing septic tanks. He said that there is no evidence this work has been carried out. Mr. Roberts has had 5 years since his original application to install this treatment plant, so there is no excuse if he hasn't. This raises the risk of phosphates entering the watercourse, which is a major issue in our area. I would also like to know where the drainage field is. It does not appear to be in the proposed plan. Can I carry on, or can I? I've got one more paragraph.
Okay, well, I'll let it be, but if it is a short one, otherwise we'll call it a halt.
I doubt from anyone from planning has visited this site since 2020. In addition to the free caravans, Mr. Roberts has now installed and plumbed in 2 shipping type container buildings, which are not in his proposed plan. They are visible from the main road and are an eyesore. As I understand, he should have planning permission for them, but hasn't. He seems to think he can do what he likes with his site and act with impunity. The containers have spotlights on them, which at night shine into the windows of 2 nearby properties, Mendip View and our house, causing light pollution. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much indeed.
You can have that if you want.
We then have a second speaker, and Gemma Johnson. Again, you have 3 minutes, and I will give a little toleration again.
Oh, mine's not as long as that, sorry.
No, fine.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I am speaking as a resident and on behalf of my family who live on the land in Butley. I would like to address our planning application, and importantly, a few rumours that we are not now, nor are we planning to move more static caravans onto the land. We simply wish the 3 existing dwellings already there to remain for our family, not 3 extra ones. I know this has caused some confusion and concern to the locals, and I hope this clarifies our intent. We are a traveller family, and we've lived in Butley for more than 6 years. We have integrated fully into the community, and we call Butley our home. I help run local scout group as a leader, providing safe club for Butley's youth. My mother, Annie, is a self-employed cleaner who has worked for many people in the village and is a trusted friend to many. Josh has worked for the Butley Landscaping for over 8 years, which includes maintaining the churchyard's grounds. Our children attend the local primary school and colleges, and their entire social circle is here in the village. When we first arrived, the land was in disarray, required a significant amount of work. Over the years, we have spent a lot of time and money clearing it and planting new trees and to turn it into a green, low-impact site. We have long-term plans to continue rewilding the site. This includes more British heritage species and having a clear wildlife corridor throughout our land. We are conscious of our footprints. We pay for private rubbish collection and always support local businesses. We call Butley our home, and we simply wish to continue to call it our home. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you again for coming and speaking to us today. Right, I have no other public speakers, so I will ask the officers if they want to make any comment on what we've heard before we go to members' questions. Great, thank you. I'll open the floor then to people who wish to speak. I note that the two ward councillors, Councillor Reid and Councillor Sully, are here in the room today. Anybody wishing to speak? Councillor Reid and then Councillor Sully.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor, traveller sites are a bit of a moot point, have been a moot point for many, many years. We have one in Evercreech. We had permission for it. There's far more travellers there than they got permission for. And this is a result of not having enough sites. It's not ideal. I mean, on the face of it, reducing 6 caravans down to 3, excellent. Excellent. I have concerns also. I mean, we have heard that there are also 2 containers on site. I believe they have electricity. I'm told they're electricity contained. Are these contained in the application at all? Do they have permission for that? I would like to know. And lastly, light pollution. The member of the public said there's a lot of light pollution and it's affecting their neighbours. So I would particularly like to know if we could put a recommendation in a condition to reduce light pollution. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Reid.
Yes, just come back on a couple of those points. I wasn't aware of the recently added containers and spotlights on the application side. Obviously, this can be investigated by our planning enforcement, reluctant to say team, but planning enforcement. But sometimes shipping containers are classified as chattels in terms of the use of the land, and or depending on what they're being used for, etc. So it might not necessarily require any additional permission, but they're certainly not included in this application. But that can be investigated. With regard to lighting, we could put a lighting condition on in relation to neighbouring amenity, rather than our usual lighting condition with regard to protecting bat habitats. But there's no bat habitat around in this part of the district. But a condition could be imposed with regard to ensuring lighting isn't a problem for neighbours.
Thank you for that. Just like to point out, it's not just bats which are affected by, as you know, I feel strongly about light pollution, and bats have just happened to be a particular species which people are aware of, but a lot of wildlife get affected. Thank you. Councillor Sully.
Thank you, Chair. The backdrop really to this application is that there is a difficulty with sites and with caravans in this area that is almost impossible for local people. I'm sure that bears on, that's something that anyone who is local to the area will be thinking about. But what we've got here is a change of use. We've got residents that are using our system to kind of get the correct planning permission. So I note that. I also note that some, that another member of another resident has spoken as well with an objection. The parish council's objected to it on a couple of grounds to do with noise and disturbance areas, but you can read that in their feedback. But I can't see that many other comments that seem to be opposing it. So it's, as I say, it's a change of use. It is a family that are there now, and so my question is the consequences of us not going with the officer recommendation. Is that obvious what that consequence is, that there would be enforcement? Is that correct? Secondly, my heart does sink when I hear at the intro of this presentation about Butley being a primary village. I know it is in the plan, but what services are there? No pub, no shop. There is a school, but should be a school, shouldn't there? Really, most places most villages have a school or near a school. So I appreciate the framework here for planning, but I think Butley is suffering from this outdated label of being a primary village. And you know, it's a question for outside of this committee: is what happens when things change, like they have changed for Butley. So yeah, change of use. Family there, spoken today. They're going through the right channels. What's the consequences if we don't go with officer recommendation? Thank you.
I've got Councillor Clark next. Thank you. Have I missed somebody? Yes. Do you wish to respond to the questions there?
Yeah, I think there was a question about, if we don't approve this, would there be enforcement? And there would have to be, yeah. So that would be a full enforcement to consider legitimate of the applicant, etc. So yes.
Thank you. With that, so we will be making people homeless. And that was yes. You didn't have your mic on. Sorry.
Essentially, yes, but they have a right to appeal any enforcement action, and that would be taken into consideration in the appeal.
Thank you for that. Councillor Clark, you wish to comment?
Thank you, Chair. It seems to me there's quite a lot of loose ends in this application, and I sympathise with the people who want to stay where they've lived for the last 6 years, and I am minded that Carlton has probably got this right. We've taken away some of the problem and replaced it by a much smaller problem, probably. I don't know if it is a problem. The loose ends, we have the neighbour is concerned about what they're doing on the land. We've got the issue of these containers. We don't know what they do, whether they're plumbed in, wired in, we don't know. We have the issue about the 12,000 litre packaged sewage treatment plant, which is it in or isn't in? I don't know. I've heard both statements. The other thing Toby said, he had sent out 6 letters. Councillor Reid said his neighbour wasn't advised of the application. It should be fairly easy to get the address of Councillor Reid's neighbour and compare it with a list of letters that were sent out by Toby to see if they actually do go out. And this is a subject that Simon and I have spoken about before. Lots of people don't get it. Now, they probably throw it in the bin. I don't know. It might not get delivered. But this looks as though it's fairly easy to check whether the thing was actually received or not. Having said all that, the word enforcement was raised by Carlton just now. My proposal would be to defer this for 1 month and go and have a look and get all these loose ends up together. Yes, the package treatment plant is in. Yes, these containers are chattels, and let the people stay there. That is my proposal, Chair.
Okay.
I'd like to second that.
Okay, we have a proposal and seconder. I will take some more comments from other members and then come back to that. Councillor Carswell.
Should I come back on that? On those points?
Sorry, if
Yeah.
apologies.
Yeah, I appreciate there are some loose ends with the application, things being raised at today's meeting. Obviously, we've taken it on face value by the applicant and his agent that there is an existing package treatment plant on site, etc. We could, in terms of sorting those loose ends out, put an additional condition on any forthcoming, if it were approved, for those details to be provided, and suitable to serve those 3 units on the site. So we could add a PTB condition to the scheme, as I've already said, with regard to the lighting. So we could put an additional things in there, which hopefully will resolve the issue with regard to other elements on the site not included in the application. Is unfortunately a matter for enforcement, and that's something that could change day to day. So not a reason to really delay any decision going out.
Okay, interesting comments. It's very difficult as the chair. I'm begged to want to go back and challenge some of those comments, but I'll leave it to the floor first. Councillor Carswell and then Councillor Demery.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to echo actually some of what Councillor Clark said. One of the things I was just wondering, the unilateral undertaking you were talking about earlier, would that be legally enforceable? I did write down about deferring the application whilst we ascertain what is exactly currently on the site, containers, sewerage, whatever, because it appears the application is out of line with what is actually there. And just a further point as regards the neighbour, what is a neighbour? Is a neighbour within 10 yards? Is a neighbour within a mile? I don't know. But it's just, you can't notify everybody in an area. So a neighbour is subjective. They may say they're a neighbour, but what is the perception of that?
Okay, thank you. Did you hear that comment, Colson, about the enforceability? His request.
You were talking earlier about a unilateral undertaking. Would that be legally enforceable?
Yes, it's a legal agreement that he would enter into that would set out that the site could only be occupied if they rescinded that original permission for the 6 units.
Just for clarity.
And we would only issue permission once that legal agreement was binding and signed.
Thank you. Just for clarity, given you saying it's rescinded, does that get deleted from the planning history of the site, or can it be evoked again going forward?
Well, it means that the permission, that element of the permission couldn't be implemented, but obviously they could apply again. And in applying again, they would have to satisfy all the policies in the development plan, including those surrounding phosphates. So they need to demonstrate to us in terms of phosphate mitigation that additional units could be put on the site without impacting on.
Okay, can I turn it around another way? We often withdraw permission to do extensions to houses and things like that. Can we withdraw any further permission on the extension of that site?
No, we can't do that.
Okay, thank you.
Every piece of land has, an applicant has a right to apply for anything they like on the land. The measure is whether it accords with that development plan policy or not.
Did you, sorry, I think I saw another hand. Do you wish to make any comment?
So just to confirm, is there a concern that the site could revert back to the 2017 permission? Am I getting that correct? Yes.
No, that wasn't a concern of mine.
Okay.
My concern is basically the application doesn't seem to include what is actually on the site, and therefore that's why we should consider deferring.
Okay, we have an outstanding proposal at the moment. Does anyone want to ask any questions, make any comments before we move to Councillor Dim?
sorry if this has been covered, but I just want to ask a question. So to get clear in my mind, is planning permission required for the shipping containers on the land?
It depends what's in it.
I'm being advised by my advisor on my left here that it depends what's in them, which is an assumption I was making. Is that right?
You're quite correct. It's all dependent on what they're being used for. So while the shipping container itself might be classified as a chattel not requiring any permission, it's with regard to the use of that. And obviously it sits on land, so there's a change of use of the land. So that if that doesn't accord with the existing uses of the land, then it might require planning permission.
Thank you.
But it's not part of this application. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just being pedantic to Councillor Carswell's comment. I meant a neighbour who's got a boundary in common with the applicant, not people miles away.
Thank you for the clarity. Councillor Hendry.
Good afternoon, Chair. This is not actually my area, so the only information I have is what's on my screen. I'll say that. On the subject of shipping containers, there's a place in Burnham-on-Sea that's actually got two shipping containers, one on top of the other, and they've created that into a house. They got retrospective planning, which I thought was absolutely bizarre, but they did. And I brought it up on the planning meetings and they said, oh, it's okay. So it went through. So on the point of shipping containers, it's very ambiguous, I think. Planning North, I've never in 7 years known a traveller's application be rejected, not in 7 years. And that may well be because of Somerset Council's legal obligations. That may well be, which that's the way it is. One issue, I'm not quite sure about this. I'd like someone to explain it to me. Waste, okay? Is this into septic tanks or is it into the mains? But if it's in the mains already, I'm not quite sure. I seem to have missed something here. Is all the units tapped into the mains or tapped into a tank? And if they're in the tank, would they eventually go into the mains? I'm a bit unsure about this. Could somebody just brief me on that, please?
Can you provide clarity on the provision?
What I understand is it's a package treatment plant, a 12,000 litre package treatment plant, which has been put on the site, and each unit discharges into that one package treatment plant. The overflow from which would probably go to soakaways on the land, or it could actually end up in a local stream, etc. I'm not aware of the details, but obviously that was put in under a previous permission for the 6 holiday units, and at the time we didn't have the issues with regard to phosphates, so it wasn't the condition requirement of the permission. With regard to your first point, containers to dwelling, I think you hit the nail on the head with regard to those containers, one on top of the other, and you said that they got retrospective permission. So there was an opportunity to review those shipping containers in respect of their intended use, and it was the council that decided to recommend approval, but it was through a formal planning process. Any shipping containers on the site at the moment would have to be investigated by enforcement, and if they required permission, we'd be asking for it.
Okay. I have Simon Crawford.
Yeah, just members, just for clarification, I've just checked the consultation records for the case, because again, obviously the point's been raised about neighbours being notified. So the 3 nearest properties to the site, which are to the other side of the highway. So you've got Dow House Cottage, Dow House and Wood Lane House. Our records show notification letters were sent to all those properties about this meeting today and the fact that the application was being considered.
Okay, thank you for that clarity. Do you want to make any further comment, Councillor Reid?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah. Well, this is an ideal situation to pardon me, regularise what's been going on at a site that all sorts have been going on by the sound of it. I think I will have to accept that there are too many loose ends, as has already been brought up, and I would certainly vote for a deferment for a month whilst these are tied together. Thank you.
Okay, we have a proposer and a seconder for that, but Councillor Denton wanted to speak.
Thank you. Just for if we're going to be deferring, I just wanted some more answers. So there's a concern that the family may not be a traveller family. So just for clarification, is there a definition? Is there a checklist? Is there a way that we can be clear about that? The other question I have is the footpath. Has there been any protection on that? I think there was a mention of that in the report. The other point is, once it's been allocated as a GRT site, will that remain so, and how do we enforce that? The next question is about, and I think it's already been covered, prevention of intensification of the site, which could be, something that we need to just consider. The septic tank is the other concern. And then the report also made mention of 90 pitches short in the county or the area. If we haven't done a proper review and there's been policy or strategy in relation to this, which just seems to have been put on the back burner for years, how do we know that we're exactly 90 pitches short? And how has this number been calculated? So those are questions probably not for now, but if we are deferring, it would be really useful to have some of those questions answered with the next report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ashton.
Yes, so this application is predicated on a package treatment plant being extant there. So presumably if we delayed this to check that it was there, this application would be thrown out because it wouldn't be valid with regard to discharge. Anyway, it would be reapplied for with an application for a package treatment plant if it wasn't there. So presumably delay, we could actually check that it was actually there.
Like I said, we could add a condition which required them to demonstrate that it's all there, and if not, provide it.
But if we're modifying that, then there's the phosphate issue because you're putting in a new sewage treatment plant.
No, because they got an extant permission for 6 units on the site with a package treatment plant.
But if that hasn't been...
But the permission is extant. So they can go back, if the package treatment plant isn't there, they can still go back and put it in because the permission is extant. They can do anything they like in perpetuity on the site. I know it doesn't make sense, but unfortunately, that's why they have the fallback position.
But just for clarity, can we have an understanding of that? Because I can understand why the councillor is a little concerned. Most planning applications have a time limit on them, 3-5 years, and then they time out. How old is this application, and had they actually invoked the application in terms of holiday lets? Because I think there is some misunderstanding as to the actual status of what was agreed, when it was agreed, and has it actually been moved forward as a holiday let?
I'll explain that one, Carlton. So what Carlton set out, and he set out in his report quite clearly, but apologies if it's been confusing. The planning permission granted allowed for the redevelopment of the site for the landscaping business and the 6 holiday lets. And because they've implemented the landscaping business, that planning permission, which allows them to also deliver the 6 holiday lets, remains extant and can be implemented at any point in time. The strange thing about the British planning system is that although it sets a time frame for you to commence a development, it doesn't set a time frame for you to complete a development. So effectively, you could, and it happens, you can go and dig the foundation footings of a residential dwelling, and you have implemented the permission. You keep the permission alive. So in this case, what we've got is that we have a permission in 2017, Carl, is that right? That allowed for the landscape business and the 6 holiday let units. That permission is extant because they've implemented the part of that permission that allowed them to carry out the landscaping business. So what Carlton's saying, because that permission is extant and they could deliver 6 holiday let units on the site without any phosphate mitigation, to deliver 3 caravans for occupation by gypsies and travellers, it is effectively taking the benefit of that fallback position. But as he says, and as you've discussed, effectively they can lawfully put 6 caravans on the site, which will be occupied by people and will generate foul water flows, and they can do that without putting any phosphate mitigation in place. So what we're recommending is that if they unilaterally agree to set aside that permission through a unilateral undertaking, what effectively you'll be permitting now is a lesser amount of residential occupation of the site. Does that help?
Okay, I think we're in a situation now where I think it'd be appropriate. Everyone's had a chance to say something. I'll take Councillor Dimery and then we'll go to the proposal.
Yeah, just want clarity that that agreement is cast iron and it can't be rescinded, or because it sounds very nice and mutual from what you're saying, but so it's actually enforceable. That agreement is enforceable.
It would be enforceable, but as Carlton said, there'd be nothing stopping them from applying for another form of development on the site. But in doing so, they would have to demonstrate compliance with all the policies of the development plan, which if they tried again afresh, they would then need to comply with the requirements for phosphate mitigation, because they've set aside the opportunity that they had to deliver the 6 units.
Okay, that's all I need.
Okay, so now we have in front of us a proposal. I think Councillor Clark proposed it, that this is deferred for 1 month to establish the outcome of the various loose ends, I think is the description. And included in that were some of the questions Councillor Denton mentioned. Sorry, do you want?
Yeah, no, I just want to be sure, because often when something comes back, we only can discuss the certain specific elements. So I want to be sure that some of the loose ends that we've mentioned, well, all of them really are there for us to have the capacity to discuss next time, rather than the meeting will only be for 1 issue or 2 issues, if that.
In your commentary, you talked about the status of the occupiers. There's a submission that is on the application case record, which sets out it's labelled gypsy status biography. Again, from our view generally, as the local planning authority, if somebody declares that they have gypsy and traveller status and they go to the extent to demonstrate why, and I've just looked at what's included in that, it's probably not for us to, if you like, challenge the legitimacy of it. What we can do though, and you'll see that Carl's included it as a condition in his recommendation, is that we can impose a restriction that restricts the occupation of the 3 units to people who would comply with the gypsy and traveller definition. So if you like, that's the control mechanism we've got. And if, say, for instance, somebody, the current group of people that there depart for whatever reason, and somebody else moves in and they're not of gypsy and traveller status, then yes, we could then enforce against the terms of that condition.
Thank you. I'm just asking because that was a reference from this public speaker, really, who is a local that lives there. So, and yeah, just want to be sure that we've got the footpath and enforcement, I suppose we covered with the expansion, the septic tank, and then also just about the traveller policy that we have at Somerset Council, which a review we're still waiting for, but we have made quite clear that we're 90 short, and I just want to know where that number comes from if we don't have clarity across the county. Thank you.
Can I come back on that? I think it's important, if we go through all what you've said, for the application to be deferred and then come back again, all that information is currently with you. Okay, you don't need any additional information. Okay, so with regard to the status, like Simon has already said, the legitimate status to be on the site. Irrespective of that, anyone can apply for a gypsy traveller pitch. It needn't be a gypsy or a traveller, right? Anyone can apply, as long as we put that condition on saying it is only occupied by gypsy traveller people. Okay, so that was your third point with regard to how do you control that. Well, we do that through that condition process, just to make sure that that land is used in perpetuity for that particular type of occupier, which meets our local plan policy. With regard to the footpath, there is a curve. If you go down on site, and you'll see that it goes directly north and goes via the stream and then into the village there. That's unrestricted and it isn't impacted by the development at all. So so obviously the package treatment plant, we said we could put a condition on to control that, and they within a timely period demonstrate to us and put in place, if it isn't there, a package treatment plant, and that sort of covers everything that you've sort of raised and asked for us to come back again next time. So essentially,
Just to be clear, I don't actually want to refer. Refer. I don't really want to defer because I know that has an impact on your workload, and I don't want to do that. So if you've covered everything, then we all have the capacity now to make a vote, really. So there we go.
Is it worth just saying, following Carlton's comments there, that obviously you're concerned about the drainage field and whether or not the package treatment plant has been installed. So we would be adding an additional condition to our recommendation to cover that concern that you've raised if the resolution to defer fails and you then get back to the officer recommendation.
Thank you. Could I just add something on that, on the package treatment plant? As you said, you've taken everything at face value. What you've been told, they're all connected and it works and the discharge is appropriate. Is there any way we can ensure that somebody actually just checks to see what it is? We spend an awful lot of effort trying to resolve sewage plants, and I'm just concerned that this one we've just taken at face value, and I'm just concerned that it's been installed correctly, it works, and the discharge is appropriate, whether it is into a stream or is it into the ground.
Yeah, I'm just looking because I was going to do the chair on the planning application form. Applicants are required to advise how they are going to manage foul waters. And in this case, they have said, question 13, foul sewage, package treatment plant, are you proposing to connect to the existing drainage system? No. So they're telling us that they are going to connect, or in this case have connected through the previous permission to a package treatment plant. So again, if that doesn't give you as a committee sufficient comfort, we can impose a condition which requires the applicant to submit the details of the package treatment plant that they have installed. And if they haven't installed it appropriately, we can draft a condition to require them to install an appropriate package treatment plant.
Thank you, Councillor Dimmery.
We could delay putting the permission out and to give the agent a sufficient time to provide us that information.
Can I have Councillor Dimmery and then come back to you, or is it specific to this? Okay, go ahead.
If I may, Councillor. If we're looking at the drawing submitted, with the proposed site plan, the location of the treatment plant is actually identified on that, just in front of Caravan 2.
Okay,
And that includes, I believe, the lines running to and from that in terms of gathering and disposal of waste.
okay, councillor Dimmery.
Can I put forward an alternative proposal? I propose that we accept this on two conditions. One is that the package treatment plant is confirmed. And the second one is that none of the shipping containers are dwellings. They are permissible
Chattels. Thank you. I would like to go.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's a really positive recommendation, Councillor Dimmery. All I would say is that you would be entitled to impose the check on the package treatment plant. I think in terms of the containers, by adding that into the mix on the decision on this application, you're slightly confusing things. And effectively, you've raised your concern. What the correct action for the planning authority would be to investigate and to find out exactly how those shipping containers are being used, and if they are being used inappropriately, then the council would still have the ability to take enforcement action, notwithstanding your decision on this application today.
I think I accept that as an amendment to my condition.
Okay, so on that basis, you're saying that you would like to carry on with your proposal?
Yes, I've accepted what Simon has said about but I'm assuming that the system has the safeguarding to assume that shipping containers are not used as dwelling places. If I have that, then I will withdraw that element to my condition and go with the one condition, which is the package treatment plant is in place and operative. I'd like to see it investigated.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
And just to confirm, any use of shipping containers or any other structures, independent dwelling units on the property, from this point, would constitute a breach of planning regulations in and of itself. So their use or the use of shipping containers or any other ancillary structure would have to relate specifically to the units or to whatever commercial use is on the property, and would need to comply with permitted development.
Okay, thank you. Can we go back to Councillor Clark, who put forward his proposal some time ago and about deferring? Are you clear as to the reasons why you wish to defer? Do you want to share them again with us? I'm conscious that people seem to have a limited memory and there's been a lot of discussion, so I want total clarity. What would your proposal refers to?
My deferment is I don't think we should refuse these people permission to stay there. My deferment is to give them every opportunity to prove that they should stay there legally, have a reason to stay there. And I do not query at all what their status may or may not be. I accept they've made an application to the planning people and are entitled to do it. And if the planning is approved, that's fine. I am saying we've got different opinions to what's there and what isn't there, what's being used for and what it's not being used for. And I would like, or I suggest, a month for somebody to go and check that these people are all in good order and they're probably working in good faith. I don't doubt that for 1 minute, but there are too many stories backwards and forwards. This is done and that's not done. Let's check it and be done with it. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I accept your proposal, and can we have a seconder? Yeah, but she has left the room, and therefore I'm not sure. Can you?
Yeah. Yeah, albeit Councillor Hart left the room for a very short period of time. The Constitution and the rules of debate say that if a councillor leaves, they can't take part in the vote. And on this occasion,
But not taking part in the vote, does that also mean I seconded it, so that you need another seconder? I think what Roz is saying.
Yes.
Okay, so I withdraw my seconding, sorry.
Thank you for that clarity. Do we have another second?
Can I second it so we can go to the vote, please, Chair?
I appreciate Councillor Sully had her hand up, but are you content at this stage? We take this deferment to a vote. Great. So we're voting on a deferment for 1 month to resolve the outstanding issues, regardless of what's sitting in the officer's report. And what we're saying, it's specifically around the packaged sewage plant and on what is or isn't on the site as it stands at the moment. Is that correct? Okay. Could I have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Carswell. Right. Could we then, are you aware that everyone what we're voting for? Could I have a show of hands, those who wish a deferment for 1 month? Those who are voting against that proposal? 1, 2, 3. And those who are abstaining? 2. 2 abstentions, 3 against, and what was the figure? 5, 4, 6, 6, 4. So the motion has been passed. We are deferring this for 1 month to resolve those 2 particular issues. And also, I think it would be helpful if the planning officer could actually give us a summary slide next time of the conditions pertaining to this planning application. So they're very clear on the screen. What are the conditions? Right, everyone. So on that basis, we'll then move on to the next application. Thank you for the reminder. I will suggest that we have a comfort break. It's 12 minutes to 4, so we'll take 12 minutes. And everyone can be back by then promptly, please. Yeah, 4 o'clock. It's 4 o'clock now. Do we have everyone we expect back in the room? Right. Thank you. And welcome back to those online. We're now moving on to item 7 on the agenda. This is planning application 2025/0531. It's full and it's consideration of demolishing an existing barn and an erection of a 5-bed residential dwelling house. We have again Trudy with us to do it. Welcome back, Trudy.
So the application is for the demolition of the existing barn and the erection of a 5-bedroom dwelling and carport at Robbery Farm, Robbery Lane, Litford on Foss. So this follows several planning approvals relating to the conversion of the barn to a dwelling instead, one of which is still extant and could be implemented at any time. Could be implemented within 3 years, giving the applicant a fallback position. So this shows Robbery Farm in an aerial view. So the barn proposed for demolition is indicated by this arrow here. So it's that building there. So this is the railway line to the north and Lidford on Foss is beyond that. And then there's the fisheries business to the south. This is the site location plan. The red line has been reduced since the previous conversion application. So the conversion included a residential curtilage that came all the way out here, but this has now been reduced to just this red line area. This arrow here, so that where it's shaded in here, that indicates a private shared access lane as the adopted highway along Robbery Lane ends just here where my pointer is. This is the existing site plan. So the existing barn is here. This is the adjacent farmhouse. and its rear extension. And then these here are existing. And then this is the proposed site plan. So the proposed dwelling is to be set significantly back from the farmhouse. So previously the barn was in this sort of area here. The proposed dwelling is set further back than that. So this is the proposed carport and back lot here. There's probably too small for you to see, but there's a bin store and bin collection area here and here. And there's a package treatment plant proposed here to replace the existing septic tank for the farmhouse and the new dwelling. So this shows the existing and proposed ground floor plans. So on the ground floor, it's proposed to have a games room, living room, WC, utility, pantry, boot room, and a kitchen diner. And then outside you can see there's like a lower terrace and an upper terrace just to reflect the topography of the site. And this is the existing and proposed first floor plans. So there's 4 bedrooms at first floor with a dressing room and ensuite bathrooms and a family bathroom as well. And then at second floor level, we've got the 5th bedroom and a study. So these are the existing elevations. So the farmhouse and its rear extensions are also shown in these. So this is the farmhouse here, and this is the barn proposed for conversion. And this is the proposed elevations of the new dwelling. So local stone is proposed for the majority of the external walling. They intend to reuse the stone from the barn, and also slate tiles are proposed for the roof, which will mirror the adjacent properties. Timber cladding is also proposed to be used for the rear portion of the building, and also in some sort of feature panels, as you can see on the rear here. Sample panels of stonework and timber cladding will be required by condition to ensure they are of a high quality, and solar panels are proposed on the rear and southwest roof slopes, and an air source heat pump is also proposed. So this is the proposed garage. It's referred to as a garage on the plan, but it's more of a carport as it's open to the front. And it includes a back loft, which was requested by our ecologist during the course of the application. So that was amended during the application whilst it was submitted to address the recommendations of the bat emergence surveys that were submitted. And this is a section through the proposed dwelling on the left here. And then on the right, it's just the proposed roof plan, just showing the roof lights and the solar panels. So this image is a sketch from the design and access statement to show how it might look once built out. It's from above and slightly to the rear. So this is the proposed dwelling here and the proposed carport. This is the end of Robbery Lane here. And this is the existing farmhouse and the adjacent barn conversion. So the impact of light pollution from the roof lights proposed has been considered. This image is taken from the CPRE Dark Sky interactive mapping system, and it shows the existing light pollution from around Lidford-on-Foss. So the site is marked approximately with the blue star here. So it's on the edge of an area that does already experience low levels of light pollution at 1 to 2 nanowatts per centimetre squared. So officers do not consider that the use of roof lights in this location would be harmful to any dark sky areas. Just to run through some site photos. So on the left is the site with the barn that's proposed to be demolished and replaced with the dwelling. And on the right here, we've got the adjacent farmhouse. And on the left is looking northeast along the private access track towards the public highway. And on the right is looking southwest into the farmyard. So the top left is looking sort of northeast across the proposed carport area towards the existing barn conversion, which is this building you can see here. At the bottom left shows the barn and the adjacent farmhouse from the rear. And then on the right, you can see the existing septic tank that's serving the farmhouse, which is proposed to be upgraded to a package treatment plant. And these are just some images from site and from the design and access statement, just showing the structural issues with the existing barn. So the key considerations, officers consider that the principle of development is acceptable. There's a fallback position for a barn conversion. So whilst the development is outside the development limits in the countryside, it's a one-for-one replacement in terms of the number of dwellings. Looking at the design of the development and the impact on character, the proposal will reuse the stone and timber from the existing barn, and they're also proposing a number of sustainability measures, including solar panels, an air source heat pump, and rainwater harvesting. And the dwelling is to be set further back within the plot than the existing barn, so officers don't consider it to harm the character of the existing farmhouse. So officers don't consider it to harm the character of the adjacent farmhouse due to its subservient position set back from the lane. In terms of residential amenity, it's not considered that the proposal would be harmful to residential amenity of the adjacent farmhouse or barn conversion, other than temporary disturbance during the construction period. The access and parking situation are as already approved for the extant barn conversion, with the addition of the carport to provide some extra storage. And due to the small scale of the development, it's considered that drainage will be adequately dealt with through the building regulations process. Although at this stage, the applicant has confirmed they're proposing soakaways on site for surface water. So the parish council have raised concerns regarding the impact on bats and reptiles. However, their comments were received prior to the submission of bat emergency surveys and reptile mitigation surveys. Somerset Ecology Services have no objection to these surveys, subject to their recommendations being conditioned. And that'll include a sensitive lighting scheme, external lighting scheme, on-site supervision from an ecologist, and the provision of a bat loft within the carport. And then in terms of biodiversity net gain, the applicant intends to build the dwelling as a self-build exemption. So should members approve the application today, then it would be required to be referred to the legal team to secure this through a Section 106 agreement or a unilateral undertaking. And lastly, the phosphate impact of the development is also relevant. So the applicant submitted a shadow habitat regulations assessment to show that mitigation could be provided by replacing the current septic tank with a PTP. And this approach has been endorsed by Natural England and Somerset Ecology. So should members decide to grant permission today, this would be subject to a self-build B&G exemption being secured by Section 106 agreement, and also subject to these conditions, the headline of which I've listed here. So they include removing permitted development rights relating to extensions and outbuildings in order to prevent further development that may be harmful to the rural character. And there's also a condition for a tree protection plan to ensure the trees on the site are retained as shown on the plans, and that all the sustainability measures in the design and access statement are brought forward and implemented as well. So subject to these conditions, the officer recommendation is to approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you for that. That was very thoughtful. You caught me thinking on several of your lines of comments. Right, we have two public speakers. The first one from the Parish Council, Councillor Jim Frampton. This is Lidford-on-Foss Parish Council. You have 3 minutes from time of speaking.
Thank you, Chair, committee members, for the opportunity to present the position of Lidford-on-Foss Parish Council on the proposed development. Having reviewed the reports that have been submitted since the Parish Council considered this application in the first half of the year, and having consulted the immediately adjacent neighbours, we have no objection in principle to this proposed development if certain appropriate conditions are set. First, there were 13 conditions which were applied to the previous approval, as outlined, which was approval 2020-045 full, the conversion of the existing barn to a 4-bedroom dwelling. We would like to see these conditions also applied to the current proposed development, particularly conditions 3 to 13, which address materials, permitted development rights, drainage, ecology, and external lighting. And many of those, Ms Gallagher has already outlined, would be included. We'd like all those to be reviewed and included if possible. The design and access statement for the current application in its paragraph 1.1 already appears to accept that would be appropriate in stating that the proposed development of Rubbery Farm Barn respects the already established principles of use gained in the previous planning application for a conversion of the existing barn under 2020-457 full. I would just add, with respect to Ms Gallagher's point about low levels of light pollution, there are very low levels of light pollution in this area. They are not discernible to the human eye, and acceptance of roof lighting would therefore likely cause some loss of residential amenity, and I would ask the planning team to reconsider whether that would be appropriate. Moving on to my second point, this concerns the assumed occupancy of the proposed development. Now, my understanding, at the risk of showing my ignorance, is that Somerset Council's calculations for phosphate mitigation and water consumption assume an average of 2.3 occupants per dwelling, regardless of its size. And we fully understand that that is a practical expedient using the Office for National Statistics average occupancy for the county when dealing with matters that can be aggregated across its full area. However, this presents risks when applied locally. The proposed development is a 5-bedroom dwelling which could easily accommodate 5 to 6 people. This is a concern because the sole water main supply to the area in which the proposed development is sited is already at capacity, resulting in periods of low water pressure for the existing dwellings and businesses there. The assumption that sufficient water supply is available for an additional dwelling of 2 to 2.3 more persons, let alone potentially 5 to 6 more, is highly questionable. We would therefore recommend that the council consider applying conditions that would ensure adequate water supply infrastructure provision if this application is approved, in accordance with the amended local plan Part 1 development policies. Finally, I'd just like to make a broader point which has arisen during our considerations of this application. The phosphate mitigation measures required for this proposal, which are updating the package treatment plant and the installation of a Clargester, will only just mitigate the occupancy of 2.3 people. If the planned dwelling is used to close to its planned capacity, these will be inadequate, heightening the risk to the rich biodiversity of the Somerset Level and Moors Ramsar site. The council does not assume an occupancy of 2.3 for a 4+ bedroom house when determining parking spaces, and it is not clear why this assumption is therefore acceptable for phosphate mitigation in such a sensitive area. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, and thank you for finding time to join us this afternoon. We now move on to the second public speaker. It's Emily Atkinson from Orme Architecture.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Emily from Orme, the agent for the application. The detailed officer's report does illustrate nearly all the main points associated with the application and its history, and so there are only a few additional points that we just wanted to highlight. Firstly, I just wanted to iterate that the site does currently hold planning permission to convert and extend the existing barn, providing the fallback for the principal development on the site. As set out in the application, demolition of the existing barn is proposed due to its deteriorating condition. The barn conversion approval predated the phosphate issues, which we are now all very familiar with. However, the attempt to discharge the foul drainage pre-commencement condition took many years and so has recently been resolved. And it's in that time that the barn has deteriorated significantly and so is disproportionately costly to proceed with the conversion. The proposal delivers a functional and sustainable long-term family home that responds sensitively to its rural setting. Rebuilding the barn style dwelling set back from the road reinforces its subordinate relationship to the farmhouse. And additionally, this enables a highly energy efficient building using renewable technologies and high performance building materials. Stone from the existing barn will also be reused and ensure continuity and reduce the overall material use at the site. The application has been brought to the committee today following concerns raised from the parish council regarding the drainage and ecology and local impact. These have since been had additional information provided. Surface water will be managed on site in line with previous approval and when agreed with building control. Foul drainage will be for the replacement of the adjacent house's septic tank with a shared package treatment plant, and that will provide the mitigation for the phosphate loading, and that has been approved by Somerset Ecology Services and Natural England. Further ecological surveys have been undertaken with mitigation measures suggested as per the reports. Both Somerset Ecology Services and Natural England have reviewed the proposals and accepted the submitted shadow HRA. The materials have been selected to reflect the local vernacular, stone from and to match with the existing barn and some complementary timber cladding, typical of the traditional agricultural buildings. While the roof height has increased slightly to allow modest accommodation with the roof space, the footprint remains controlled and the northernmost extension reduces to a single-storey flat roof to minimise any impact on the neighbouring amenity. We appreciate there was concern with regards to the roof lights and impacting the night skies, but these do serve rooms where occupiers would be able to use blinds, and the other properties within the area could potentially fit roof lights under permitted development rights in the future. For all these reasons, and particularly given the established fallback position, we respectfully ask members to support the application in line with the case officer's recommendation. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Would the officer want to make any comment before we move on to members' questions?
Yeah, I'll just come back on a couple of things if that's okay. Just go back to the parish council's comments about the water supply. So in my presentation, I did mention that it would be sort of a one-for-one replacement in terms of, it's one dwelling for the barn conversion, and then they're proposing a new dwelling instead here. But I just wanted to point out that there's also a water consumption condition been added to ensure that water efficiency measures are installed. This is put on for phosphates purposes, but then would also apply to the water supply issues. So there are efficiency measures built into that. The average phosphate occupancy, I appreciate it's a large dwelling with 5 bedrooms, but we do work with Natural England and Somerset Ecology Services, and their advice is that we do take the average, even when it's just a single dwelling application. So that's taking their advice into account. We have determined that it would offset its own phosphate emissions through the mitigation proposed.
Thank you for that. Right, a number of questions, I guess, from people. I have Councillor Clark and then Councillor Reid, followed by Councillor Lovell and Sully. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. One small question. Why have the permitted development rights been removed from this application? It's got a huge garden. I would have thought it could have done what it wants. Yet we're approving sites with 620 houses on with scratty little gardens, and we don't take the permitted development rights away. Why have they been taken away from this one? Thank you.
So I thought it was appropriate to take them away just because of the size of the plot and the potential for the large buildings that they could build towards the end of the garden, and just taking into account that it's a rural area with rural character, I thought that was appropriate.
Thank you for that. I then have Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of questions. I was just wondering, first of all, Rubbery Farm, is it still a working farm? Are they still milking? Yeah, that's interesting to know. But my main question, the gentleman from the parish council asked if all the conditions from the previous application could be carried forward to this one. I just wonder which conditions are missing.
So one condition that I'm aware is missing is with the previous scheme, the applicant at the time put in a drainage strategy. Due to the scale of the development, it's not necessary for them to have put one in with this application, but they did put that forward last time, so that condition securing that drainage strategy was put on. But we've not got one up front for this new dwelling, given that it's replacing an existing building that didn't have any surface water drainage. We've sort of assessed that it would be appropriate to deal with that through building regulations, rather than insist that they put in a drainage strategy up front. So that's one condition that's missing. I believe all the others, if they were appropriate to this application, I have carried them forward as far as I'm aware.
Councillor Sully.
Thank you, Chair. So Lidford Parish Council, can you hear me okay? Yeah. Are one of the best at their process to do with planning assessments. I think they're very fair, very objective, and very detailed. So if you download their comment, they actually list all the conditions that haven't been carried through. It's actually quite complex what hasn't been carried through. And I'm a little bit lost, and I really, if I could, I would like the notes, because I'm not predetermined. We haven't discussed. I only know their deliberations, the parish council. If I could have the notes, that would help me. But I can see the conditions. So if you refer, so I'm going to hear in two different things: the planning officer and the parish council here, right? But there's a section in the parish council's feedback form that says condition 6 and foul drainage is condition 7, condition 8 to do with nutrient mitigations, the condition 10. So there seems to be quite a few conditions that have, and the parish council said we're all for this, but then the conditions need to be a bit tighter. And these previous applications that have been approved, and then the second application wasn't approved because of the certain conditions hadn't been met. But this doesn't seem to have been followed through. So it was a good question that Councillor Reid brought up, and I'm looking at quite a complex feedback from the parish council, and I feel a little bit lost because I'm not sure who to whose views to kind of help my decision go forward. I come from the point where I want the best application for the community and for the applicant. And I would prefer if this was looked into a little bit more, and there were specific responses to how do I get the answer? Why? So section 8, if you go to the parish council's response on their section 8, they've got a number of conditions that cause them a problem, and that has meant that they recommended refusal as a consultee. So that's my cause of concern, was we could have a better application surely if what the past had informed us with previous decisions were taken forward. Why is there a change? Now, this is quite a difficult one for you to answer, because really you'd have to go for every single condition and demonstrate why you don't feel they should be brought forward. I just urge everyone to look at it. It's the form from Lidford Parish Council. So I don't know. At the moment, I'm going to have to abstain until I know those answers.
Thank you. I think Councillor Lovell was somebody who put their hand up.
So, thank you, Chair. I certainly did. Just one thing.
Sorry, Chair. Can I get an answer?
Sorry, I thought it was a statement rather than an answer. No. Sorry, do go ahead.
Yeah, so I've got the parish council's comment up in front of me where they sort of run through each of those conditions. So essentially the initial planning application was put forward in 2020, which was pre-phosphates. And then, so they were then trying to discharge these conditions after the phosphate situation came in, which is why it became so complicated at the time. So there's a drainage condition relating to infiltration testing and soakaway design in accordance with building regulations part H. So that was in response to a plan that they put in showing a drainage scheme. That's not been put forward as part of this new application, and because of the scale of the development and the fact that it's a replacement building, we've not found it necessary to reapply that condition. They can just go through the building regulations process. Similarly, with the next condition they mentioned was a foul drainage condition. Obviously, that's been looked at in some detail because of the phosphate situation, but otherwise it would be a building regulations issue. The next one is to do with the European Protected Species Mitigation Licence. So it's a licence issued by Natural England that they require. That's still required on this application. It's just embedded in the recommendations of their ecology report, which have also been conditioned. So that one's covered. The next condition they mentioned as not being discharged was the provision of a bat box. So that we've got bat mitigation in the bat loft, which has been put forward as part of this application. That wasn't previously proposed before, which is why they had to put the condition on. And the other condition that's mentioned is wildlife mitigation and enhancement. Again, at the time they hadn't put significant surveys in. This time we've got a preliminary ecology appraisal, we've got bat emergence surveys, we've got reptile mitigation surveys. So all that information is up front. So it didn't need to be conditioned in the same way. So that basically all these conditions were rectified at the most recent approval, which was the 2023 barn conversion, which is the extant permission for this proposal. So yeah, those conditions have been sort of dealt with through that previous application. That is now providing the fallback for this one, which is why not all of them could be applied over, because they're not relevant. They've been dealt with up front. Thanks.
Intent?
That was really helpful. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you. My apologies. Councillor Lovell again.
Thank you, Chair. Just one thing that just hasn't been talked about. Has there at any stage been a consideration that the barn itself is of interest? It could be a listed structure, or has the conservation team been brought in to consider this application in any way? Just precaution, that's the first part of things. Secondly, because of getting a bit two stories about the roof lights, that some are saying it's okay, some are saying it's not okay. Can we resolve that one, or put some more conditions on? I mean, do we need them in the first place? You know, why do if it's an issue, why don't we just get rid of them? Thank you.
So just regards to the roof lights first, I did consider going back to the applicant to see if there were any amendments that could be made prior to the committee. But some of these roof lights are serving sort of bedrooms in the roof space. So if we removed them, then those rooms wouldn't have any openings. So I thought it was best to just bring the application as it stood. In terms of heritage, Heritage haven't been, our conservation team haven't been involved in this application. I wasn't the case officer previously, so I can't confirm if they've been involved sort of as it went on. But it does seem that no sort of heritage issues were raised if they were, because that permission was granted to convert the building without any sort of heritage consideration. Yeah, so that's the kind of fallback position that we've got that we're sort of working from now.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I would like to make some comments following Councillor Lovell. I too am very disappointed that we are seeing not the rebuilding of a barn in its location and keeping the site as is, rather than moving it back and altering the footprint of this farm. However, that is one thing. Secondly, I was a bit concerned the agent referred to being responsive to the environment. We have, and I actually went into the bottom of the drive to see how dark it was at night. and it is a dark area for all intents and purposes. It is really dark. And therefore, if you're designing a house from scratch, there is absolutely no reason to build in skylights. The agent said responsive to the environment, and my feeling is that this isn't responsive to the environment. It is a rural environment. It is a dark environment, and that it really should be, you know, if they're replacing what probably was a Q class application to save an existing barn, and then taking the advantage to move the site and build a brand new 5-bedroom house, then surely we could have a design. And Orm have produced some really good designs. We see them from time to time come through the planning, but most of them don't even hit planning. You get them, you know, get them right. But this one's got too many lights in a very big building. If you need to get lights, there's something called a window, and a window which is not at an angle to the roof, and therefore I think it's important. The very fact that we're going to have a bat loft in the garage would infer that there are wildlife around, and it's not just bats which get affected. So I'm really disappointed that we have not, as Councillor said, Sally said, got the very best for this. We've got an expensive, brand new designed house in a location which should actually bring out the very best quality architecture. And I'm not sure necessarily, yes, they've ticked the boxes about materials and things like that, which I'm delighted with, but the actual impact of moving the location, changing the style of what you've got in front of you, ignoring the environment around. I'm delighted that the PD rights have been removed. It's a very big site, and we could have a growing, and I've seen in my part of Mendip, what is a big house, an expensive house being built, and then added to in ways which really overwhelm what's going on. So I guess for me, and the very fact we haven't gone back to the applicant and said, do you really need to design a property which has that number of roof lights, is disappointing. I think that we should be working hand in hand with applicants like this and saying, you know, it is a environmentally sensitive site, can we not do something? Got the response in terms of the bat loft, can we not get a response to something else? Anyway, enough said. I'm not sure necessarily the officer has a question from me other than why we didn't ask for it to be removed in the first place. The roof lights.
Sorry, I was just going to come on that. I did mention to the agent once it was coming to committee that the concerns had been raised with roof lights, and did they want to provide any additional information or amend it at all? But they wanted to keep it as it was. So.
Thank you for that. I've got Dawn Denton, and then there was somebody else wanting to speak. It was Suzanne. Yeah.
Thank you. There we go. I'm just curious about why S106 money is in this application, because I was under the impression that it's for bigger developments, and when we've raised it before, we've been told that it's not for one-off buildings. So could you just clarify that for me, please? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So it's a lot more common with bigger developments because they trigger sort of affordable housing and financial contributions and things like that. With this one, it's just to secure their biodiversity net gain exemption. So they're doing the property as a self-build, which means they're exempt from providing BNG. But we've recently taken a decision internally that those need to be secured with a legal agreement going forward, whilst previously we were just relying on conditions. So yeah, you'll probably start to see that crop up more whilst we're using legal agreements for that purpose. But yeah, that's the only thing that's being secured through this 106 agreement.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
I think we had one other. Suzanne.
I mean, mine just follows on from Ros's really. Would it be that difficult for these Velux to just be replaced with dormers and light tunnels? I mean, surely that's not beyond the realms of possibility and it solves it for everyone. Is it that difficult?
I don't think it would be something we could sort of condition or change today, just because that sounds like it would be a change in the design that may require external consultation. But perhaps, you know, depending on the outcome of today, that might be something that the applicant considers.
Is it possible to make a request for electric blinding? So if you switch the light on in a room, the blinds come down over the dormer, or better still, having the special glass in the dormer, which it doesn't emit the level of light. I mean, both those we've seen in other planning applications, and I would have thought that was not an unreasonable condition as such.
So I did have a think about a potential condition like that, but ultimately I think it'd be quite difficult to enforce because it relates to measures that are sort of on the inside of a private property. You know, it's quite likely that those could be removed and then we would be none the wiser as the local authority.
But the point is that once you've got the darkened glass, if they remove the darkened glass, it becomes evident to the external world that there is now a light being emitted in a way which it wasn't before. So it is very much enforceable through parish councils.
Well, yeah, that could potentially be an option. The darkened glass, I was referring more to the blinds, be more of a trickier one to enforce, but yeah, that could be a potential.
Suzanne,
Sorry, this is, I mean, maybe not the best time to say this, but this seems to just be a point that we revisit many a time on various and multiple applications. Why are we not, as a planning authority, simply requesting when people put applications in, must send out some kind of guidance? Why aren't we sending out guidance that says, you know, we do not really like dormer windows. Our preferred choice would be, we do not like Velux windows. Our preferred choice would be dormers or light tunnels. And then at least you're guiding them in the right direction instead of us just endlessly having this repetitive conversation time after time, application after application. I don't understand.
Some guidance like that is something that could potentially be taken away to be discussed sort of separate to this meeting. With this one, I think the timing was also key. Obviously, we had that period of time where we were working sort of just on getting through the backlog over the 12 weeks, sort of over the summer, and that was when this one was sort of came in. So it was very much, it needs to be determined as it stands rather than negotiate on it.
Thank you. I just think moving forward, that might be something that we could consider because we are always revisiting the same.
Thank you.
Well,
thank you.
Yeah, so it's just that really is something that maybe we could consider moving forward.
Thank you, Councillor Hart, for that. We have Barry Clark.
Thank you, Chair. It's only a comment. I'm sure the architect is aware of this, but there are grids available that can be on the fronts of the Velux windows, which stop the light going vertically. It allows a bit to come forward, but it doesn't allow light pollution of the level that we're talking about here. And it also lets light into the house. So that is a solution.
I understand the brise soleil are normally designed for high level sun and a flat window. A dorm, a Velux window is almost by definition at an angle to start with. But yes, there are solutions, they're good design solutions, good architecture could actually build out a lot, I would agree. Councillor Ashton.
Yeah, going back to an earlier point, the size of the Becket treatment plant, I understand you say it's 2 point something because it's an average of houses, but can we just not condition it an appropriate size package treatment plant for a 5-bedroom house?
Just on that point, so the phosphate strategy, if you like, includes a budget calculator, which we have published ourselves as Somerset Council. So when an applicant puts together their nutrient neutrality and mitigation strategy, they use the phosphate budget calculator that we have drawn up, and that includes the sort of occupancy assumptions. So given that we as Somerset Council have come up with that and asked applicants to deal with it, to use it, I don't think it'd be reasonable for us to then turn around and say, I know you're doing a 5-bed house, but can you, change your figures, please? So that's what we do. That's how we sort of operate in relation to phosphates. Yeah, just in terms of the condition with regards to glazing, we could potentially have a condition which looks at the sort of visible light transmission of the glazing. That would potentially be more enforceable than a blind. I mean, the trouble with blinds is, they're quite easy to take on and off, whereas if we were to look at the actual, the tint on the glass, that is something that might be a bit more enforceable. And just on the point about the policy, do we keep getting asked this question? It does come back to the policy, really. Policy DP8 basically says consider lighting and dark skies in rural areas. So it's quite a general policy. It does specifically mention AONBs, or national landscapes as they're now referred to, but it's quite general in its nature. There's no sort of blanket ban on roof lights or the like, which is why we keep on getting asked the question. Of course, as the local planning authority, we do provide a pre-application service where we can say to applicants, you may want to not have roof lights, or you may not want to have a large window, for example, if that's being proposed. But at the end of the day, our job is to determine what they've submitted, and the application you have is the one before you. So all we can do is determine that. I mean, going forward with the new local plan, if that's something that members wanted to look at, having a more specific policy in relation to light pollution, the new local plan would be a good place to look at that. Thank you.
Thank you. One question, sorry, do you want to say something, Dawn, and then I would do?
No, I just wanted to ask, the parish asked for all the other previous conditions to be included. Is there any reason why, or are they included, and are there any that have been removed, and why specifically have they been removed? Did you ask that?
I think that's already been considered.
I lost Claire's point at some point, sorry.
Yeah. Thank you for that, though, because I think that is obviously concerns of people, because they are exemplary and some of the comments they make in comparison to some parish councils. So I think we need to respect that. I think in terms of a proposal, I wonder whether we can, it refers to under your conditions 9 lighting design. And I think the condition in the original one, they used a descriptor alongside lighting design. I can't remember whether it was appropriate or some other word, but I do think the lighting design, both externally and for the condition that the dormer windows are darkened glass, but it's not darkened. You can see out like daylight, but it doesn't emit the light. It's very clever technology. So could I make a suggestion that I would like to propose? There is a condition in addition to the ones you got, that there is appropriate both external light and darkened glass, or light and lack of light emitting glass for the dormers. Not the dormers, the Veluxes. Could that be an additional expansion of that condition lighting design?
Yeah, so the external lighting should all be covered under that condition, condition 9, but we could put an extra condition on relating to tinting of the glass on the roof lights.
Yeah. Okay. Do I need to have that as a separate proposal? First of all, you want it separate?
Yeah, Chair, so if you could just include that if it's your wish to go with officer recommendation with the addition of a condition relating to the tinting of windows to be determined in consultation with yourself, we can then go off after this and come up with appropriate wording in consultation with you.
Okay, well, I would like to propose that. I think I have a seconder in the Robbins, but I have two people with hands up. First of all, Claire Sully, and then Suzanne Hart.
I can understand the confusion with Dawn asking the same question, because it is complex with the previous conditions, but there does seem to be a thread to do with lighting. So no external lighting shall be erected or provided on the site until a lighting design for bats has been submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority. The design shall show how and where external lighting will be installed, including through the provision of technical specifications, so that it can be clearly demonstrated that it will not disturb the bats. And I think it was the compelling point that the chair made is what we're grappling with. And I think that the planning officer's point about this was a planning application that was in a period of trying to get through and process lots of planning applications, maybe rush through for good reasons, because he wanted to get the backlog down. But it'd be a shame that we don't get this right. So I know there's going to be groans, but I wonder whether we should defer this to get this right, to get it looks like the work has been done before in previous conditions, and I do accept that the planning officer said she's fought through those conditions, but I wonder if anything's been missed. But as I say, that it's clearly here that this should have been already been addressed, not on the fly, which was what we seem to be doing.
Okay, I think what was being proposed was that we have some conditions which are in addition to what the parish council referred to, and that is the tinting of the glass on the Velux windows. Suzanne Hart, and then we'll go back to.
Did we ever? I don't know. I'm kind of feel like I'm maybe not on my top form, but did we discuss the incoming water supply issue that was mentioned? So is it possible for them to have some kind of pump system or something? Because it sounds like the incoming water is going to be an issue.
Do you want? I think you mentioned conservation issues. Water conservation.
Yeah, for the as part of the phosphate mitigation, there's a condition on there that requires them to submit water efficiency measures. Hang on, let me just find the condition. I can read it out 1 second. So the condition 12, it's the development hereby approved shall not be occupied until water efficiency measures have been installed to ensure the potential consumption of wholesome water by persons occupying the dwelling does not exceed 110 litres per person per day. So there's limits on the amount of water that would be used at the property. And just more generally in terms of the supply, they do have extant permission for a new dwelling already. So it's just, a replacement of that in terms of the amount of dwellings that are drawing on the water supply in the area.
So does that mean it was looked into before and deemed that there was sufficient water available, or it was never looked into and it's now being questioned? Or what is the situation? Because actually not having adequate water, or a 5-bedroom house, quite easily have 4 children and a couple living there, and you know, their friends, partners, whoever staying, like they're going to use water, they're going to wash cars, they're going to blah blah blah. So not being enough water and then impacting other existing neighbouring properties because there's already too much demand on the available water supply there is a significant problem, I would have thought. I mean, we're not a third world country quite yet, hopefully.
So I don't think it was considered, oh, sorry. I don't think it was considered as part of the previous application as far as I'm aware, and it was raised for the first time as part of this application, but we do have to consider that full pack position for one dwelling already.
Can I just go in on that as well, please? So just in terms of, I think there's been a bit of confusion, probably in relation to phosphates and water supply. So the water supply condition, which relates to water efficiency measures, is commonly applied where we're dealing with a phosphate situation, because there's 2 water efficiency measures that are normally applied to new houses, either 110 litres per person per day or 125 litres per person per day. 125 is the standard building regs, and then 110 litres is when you install some extra water efficiency measures, like, you know, showers that aerate water and flush it, toilets with limited flushes and all that kind of stuff. That then feeds into the phosphate calculations. So we add that as a condition to make sure that the phosphate calculations all marry up. In terms of water supply, that's not a matter for planning. So the planning practice guidance is clear that it's not for planning to check that there's an adequate water supply for new dwellings. That is something that is dealt with by the water industry. So it's, you know, we never put any condition on to say, you know, you've got to have enough water for this new dwelling or whatever. That's just outside planning's remit, basically. And just going back to the conditions, the difference between the old application and the new application. So my understanding is there are 16 conditions on the old application, there's 12 on the current. The main differences are that the BAT conditions have been consolidated. So beforehand we had, I think, 3 different conditions which all related to the BAT sort of mitigation. That's been rolled up into 1 now. And then, as Trudy mentioned, the drainage condition is not considered necessary because that's basically a building regs issue. So as a sort of general principle, where a matter is dealt with under a different statutory regime, like the building regs or the water industry, then it's not for planning to come in and double up on that, because, you know, that's just a double lift, and we specifically advised by the planning practice guidance and planning advice generally not to do that. So hopefully that clarifies those couple of points.
Councillor Hendry.
Thank you. There's a point of order here, Chair. The piece of paper you have in front of you, what you're looking at with questions, etc., and it's been passed about here, that's not allowed because that's come from a member of the public who already has his 3 minutes. So what he's doing by default is extending his 3 minutes, and it's been quoted from and asked from. That's a point of order. That's not allowed, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm aware where it came from. What I have in front of me is a copy of part of the conditions related to the previous application, which has been referred to by several councillors here. And this is come off the website, and it is straightforward. And I'm more than happy to share that. But I agree with you, and I understand that input from members of the public beyond their original 3 minutes is not in accordance with the rules. But what we do have just come from a councillor handed to the clerk is a copy of the conditions which we've been subject to discussion for the last hour or so. So that's what it is. But I take your concern on that. Right. I'm not sure I've got anyone else to speak. We have a recommendation in front of us, which I wish to amend, and I have a proposer from myself and seconder from Councillor Robbins, and that is the wording which I think the planning officer assisted me with, and that is that that in addition to the condition around lighting design, external lighting design, which is in existence, but I would like to see a condition related to the materials used in the Velux windows on the site, and that go away, we'll get the wording right, we'll get the exact descriptor of the glass, and then it will come back to me and Tony prior to it being added to the conditions. And that's how I stand. Now, I do have in front of me a quite long and detailed external lighting condition, which was part of the original application. I haven't seen the length of the external lighting design condition. Is it within your report? I'm not sure I've seen that. Is it there? My apologies.
It would have been listed at the end in the.
I'm looking at the front. Sorry. And this is the one which I think two of you have requested, which is on page 214, number 9. And it talks about no new external lighting. I think that, and it refers to specifically the impact on lighting. And I'm not sure necessarily it does cover the bats, as did this one, and it should be maintained in that order. So what we're doing is to ask for this to be amended to include the tinting of the glass as per the wording you suggested, which is to come back with a specific condition related to that. So for people who want to look at it, it's page 214, lighting condition number 9. And as far as I can see, it's not far off what was the original condition, which is what the officer assured us with about an hour ago. Are people content with that, or do they wish to explore it further? So on that basis, I would like to propose that we go with the officer recommendation to approve this application, but with an amendment to the condition 9, which is lighting design, which is specifically around the fenestration materials of the Velux windows. Is that?
Yes, I would just say it probably sits better as a standalone condition rather than amending existing proposed condition 9. I would probably suggest we have that lighting design condition 9 as proposed, and then we have an additional condition that deals with the tinting.
Are people content with that being separate? I also, and I'll say this, Chair, I hope Orm Architecture are listening, and it would be delightful never to see your name against something with Velux windows which don't have tinted glass. Thank you for that. Okay, so you've got a proposal in front of you to go with officer recommendation with an additional condition related to the glazing of the Velux windows, which will come back and be approved by Tony and myself. Are people content with that? If we can go now to a vote, and we have a seconder in Tony, and so could I have a show of hands to approve?
Yeah.
11. Okay, so we have no abstentions. Do we have an abstention from anybody or a vote against? Okay, right. Thank you for that, and thank you very much indeed for everyone's efforts on that one. I'm delighted to say that we're now moving. You did that. Did you? Ralph.
Not here. Oh.
Just question, I just need to, for total clarity. Simon, were you here for the whole debate? Yeah.
On this item. This item.
Yeah.
You weren't when we came back from the comfort break, I don't think.
Okay, I suggest we take it outside, but given it's at least 11, whether it's 12, we can resolve that separately. We'll now move on to 8 and the appeals report. And I am very aware that we have a number here, and I will ask the officers again to particularly pick out any item which we should have any learning from. And Councillor Hendry? Yes, if you wish. But thank you for joining us today. It's appreciated. Okay. I'm aware that other people have work commitments.
Just all of these appeals.
Yeah.
You can find on the web on whatsit.com.
The appeals are on there. All we're doing is to have the officers, as we've said before, are there any learning issues we need to pick up from that?
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one of the 3 I would highlight. That is the first one, land at Pear Tree Farm, Cullen Farm Road, Glastonbury. And the reason I highlight this one is because it's the largest of those. This one was an outline planning permission for 24 dwellings. And members may recall this is an application, or this was an appeal, application and appeal near the hospital, sort of just off Old Wells Road. And it's kind of on the end of a sort of housing development that's currently being built out or might be recently completed. I think probably it's fair to say the learning point on this one is, there are grey areas, I suppose, and there are differences in opinions. This one was, the officer recommendation was to approve. Committee chose to refuse the application, and at the end of the day, the inspector allowed the appeal. The inspector seemed to have given fairly limited weight, or wasn't too concerned about the impact of the application on Glastonbury Tor. That was the key issue. It was the landscape impact, and it was so yeah, that's it really. That was one view. Yeah, Councillor Sully.
I appreciate you probably are frustrated, but that was a material reason, wasn't it? So it wasn't as if it wasn't a material reason.
Yes, that was the main reason why committee refused the application. It was the impact of the development on Glastonbury Tor, basically, both in landscape and heritage terms. So, essentially the inspector didn't agree. But, there are, as I say, there are oftentimes one opinion and another, and it's just one of those, I think.
I must admit, I was one of the people who argued and voted against the application. And I think that this is a broader issue, and that is that part of our economy, part of our way of life is actually based on landscape. And we don't have enough landscape experts in the council. Among the planners, you're having to deal with a whole range of things, and landscape planning is very difficult. And that it's very easy to say, oh, you can't see the planning site from the top of the Tor, and that's absolutely spot on. But majority of people in this part of the world see Mendip and the Tor from a distance, from afar, and therefore building, as we have over the years, gradually up the sides of the Tor, does actually have an impact on our landscape, and I think many of us recognise that. And while I appreciate the officers were working within the context of the existing local plan, I think that landscape significance, which is really being brought home by Film Somerset. The number of films being made in Somerset as they appreciate our landscape is huge. And I think that we just need to be find money and time and effort to actually get our landscape planning really as hot as we can when it gets into the new local plan. Sure.
I would just like to kind of reassure councillors that when we're looking at section 35 of the inspector's decision on this, they do recognise that there is a negative impact in relation to the character and appearance of the area, but that it's simply in the planning balance and considering the 5-year land supply, as usual, that they have come down in the position that it is not significantly adverse or sufficiently adverse to result in a refusal.
Totally appreciate that point, and I think in a way we're on the same page. But what we're saying is that we disagree, and I think officers Ed's picked up on that. It's a difference of opinion, but we care about that landscape. We care about the Somerset landscape, and I think our chair was very eloquent in the way she explained that. So I get what you're saying. A decision was made and based on an opinion. But I don't think we were wrong. If we were to go back, would we do the same thing again? Yes, we would. Yes, we would. We fight to keep that landscape.
I just think it's a really depressing, unfortunately, really depressing way for us to start the new year to hear that, because so basically, because we haven't built enough in the past, then you will build there now, even though it's not ideal. And that is what it amounts to. You can dress it up any which way you want. That's what it amounts to. And it's a really depressing start to the year, I think. I hope we can find a way, like Ros says, to protect our local landscape better than this, because that is all of our responsibility around this table.
Just a question. I've got one question related to costs. If this is a sort of a grey area value judgment, are they less likely to get costs awarded against us? Is it because if it's an obvious mistake on our part, therefore costs will be awarded? Or how does the costs work? Because we've always been beaten up on costs.
So costs in a planning appeal require unreasonable behaviour on behalf of a party. So unless we have behaved in a fashion that the inspector regards as being unreasonable, then we will not have costs awarded against us. And a matter of planning judgment and balance is very unlikely unless it is manifestly unreasonable or essentially kind of in some other fashion challengeable because of the legality of it, for example. It is very unlikely to attract a cost application, well, a successful cost application.
Thank you, that's helpful. I think we do recognise that every appeal takes officer time, and that is a cost to the authority. But on the other hand, I also think that as a committee, we need to sustain our belief in what we're trying to do. And that's an example where a number of us were concerned about the heritage as well as the landscape. And I appreciate that. Right, if there's no other comments around the appeals, I don't think the other two were particularly significant. We'll go to close the meeting. Yep, see no disagreement. Thank you very much indeed for your time this afternoon.